Hey everyone, this is Adam. I want to do this next video on duality. Um, I have a quote here from Manly P. Hall's Fundamentals of the Esoteric Sciences. I want to read that quote sort of as a jumping off point. It says, "Spirit and matter are relative terms devised to signify two phenomenal conditions of one indivisible essence. Spirit and matter are two fundamental aspects of life. Spirit and matter are interdependent terms. One has no significance without the other, for matter is the least degree of spirit, and spirit is the highest degree of matter." So, when we're trying to understand the function of the universe, the entire process can actually be broken down between the interplay of spirit and matter. Because that's really the only two things that exist. Sort of like there's only water and land on planet Earth. That's the only two things that there are here. The forces of spirit and the forces of matter playing against each other are what creates everything we have here today. As human beings, what we've done is taken a spiritual being and encased it in matter, which is why we experience the world that we experience today. We are a perfect blending of the highest aspect of spirit and the lowest aspect of matter. But more so than that, duality extends into many different forms and facets, but they're all really essentially connected in the same way, such as like male and female, another aspect of duality, of the yin-yang principle, spirit and matter, male being spirit, female being matter, light, dark, but it's important to understand that these two ideas, these two polarizations, cannot exist without the other. Just like it said in the quote, it's an indivisible essence. There's really no such thing as spirit, and there's really no such thing as matter. It's spirit matter, or matter spirit. There's no such thing as male, there's no such thing as female, there's male and female. The reason that we have bodies that physically manifest in one particular polarization as male and or female is a aspect of the split nature of our consciousness, of the reality that we're experiencing. We wouldn't be able to experience the reality we have here unless we had a male and female aspect. Same goes with spirit and matter. We wouldn't be able to have the life experience that we have here without spirit and matter, or light and dark. But you have to remember, if everything is made of light and there is no darkness, you have nothing to compare light to. So therefore, the entire term loses all meaning. It becomes dead and inert. You need darkness to compare it to. One of those quotes: "You need darkness. You need a certain level of darkness to see the stars." Well, yeah, that's true. You wouldn't be able to see anything if there was no darkness, actually. And part of the problem is our society uh, will glorify certain polarizations and demonize their opposites. And few people realize that there's no point in doing that because they're the same force. It's the same process. If you are praising pleasure, you're also simultaneously praising pain. Pleasure and pain are actually the same thing, just like lightness and darkness are the same thing. Spirit and matter, that's the same thing. We glorify pleasures, all the pleasures that we have, and we try and ignore all the pains that we have, but that's impossible, because if you're ignoring the pain, you're also ignoring the pleasure. If you're glorifying the pleasure, you're also glorifying the pain. And it's never good to latch on to any one particular polarization, because it throws things out of balance. Pretty simple. So if everything in the universe comes back into balance, does everything disappear? I don't know. It's possible, I suppose. We certainly wouldn't be experiencing life the same way. I personally believe that the split between dreaming consciousness and waking consciousness actually has a lot to do with it. I think that, you know, part of it is that our consciousness some of the time resides in spirit, being the dream world, and then the rest of the time resides in matter, or the waking world. But it's always good to find balance. Um, the idea that someone would be offended by homosexuality, that is a aspect of overpolarization, because the idea that, you know, two male physical forms or two female physical forms would express love for each other is not any different than a male and a female, because spiritually we're all really androgynous. We all have male and female energies. If you didn't have male and female energies in you right now, interplaying between each other, you wouldn't be able to exist here in physical form. So so homosexuality is another aspect of how our culture, our society, seems to demonize certain polarizations and glorify other ones. I already talked about pleasure and pain. Um, this is why there's such a big food epidemic, because we're eating food for pleasure. Really, we're using food as a drug. Really, we're eating because it tastes good, and we're eating because um, it makes you feel good. But we're not eating, at least in the moment, and we're not eating to be healthy. Because then we'd really start feeling good. uh, so be careful about how our society will spin things. Um, as I'm sure you've noticed, they have, for actually thousands of years, been carrying out this agenda of the suppression of the feminism, the feminine aspects within humanity. And you know, I'm not saying I'm a feminist, and nor am I saying I'm a misogynist, but just look at the way that our society has unfolded over the past thousands of years. Women have been fighting for rights, equal rights, for a very long time. I mean, for the longest time, slavery was taken. Black men were more important than women. Um, So it's clear that, you know, race is not quite as important to them as suppressing the feminine energies. So you have to ask yourself why. Well, what's so important about the feminine energies that they would want to suppress something like that? Well, part of it is to perpetuate this existence, to keep this charade going. The more that we suppress an entire half of our aspect of ourselves, then the easier it is for them to sneak behind us and control us, because we're incomplete. We're that much easier to be manipulated and controlled. We're missing half of ourselves. The female aspect is the one that cares and nurtures, where the male aspect is the one that uses logic and reason, and they're robotic, doesn't have a whole lot of emotional input. So we need those emotional backgrounds to our existence. Alright. So remember that all dualities are really a singularity. They are essentially completely interdependent upon each other. If you take a magnet polarized at both ends, and you cut it in half, what do you have? Well, you have two magnets with two different polarizations. So you have a negative pole here, positive pole here. You cut it in half, now you have a negative pole and a positive pole, a negative pole and a positive pole. They're inseparable. You can't separate the two. You can't separate male and female. You can't separate light and dark. You can't separate pleasure and pain. This is the same, concept like that Buddhist monk that set himself on fire in protest in the middle of the street. How was he able to sit there without even wincing in pain? It seemed as though he was in complete peace and serenity throughout the entire time his body was being immolated. Well, he was. He really was. All he did was simply detach his consciousness from his physical experience, root it in his spiritual experience, and reverse the perception of the pain he was experiencing to be an experience of pleasure, and he can sit there in nirvana and peace without any hesitation while his entire body just burns. I mean, we're all gonna die someday. That very fact alone should change people's behavior, how they treat each other. Um, so anyway, until next time. Thank you.